Welcome back to Zenpath Radio. I am your host, Ryan Son, and we're doing things a little different today. We have our co-host here. We have Roger Tran.
Nice to meet you. I was actually on the second episode of Zenpath Radio, but glad to be back. And today we have a very special guest, Jessica, the owner of Matador Mobility, where she owns with her husband Moses, and they're located in the Greater West Texas area. She is also an RN with 20 years of nursing experience in several areas such as bedside in a hospital, home health, hospice, skilled nursing, rehabilitation, and she spent the majority of those years as a chief nursing officer. Definitely has a versatile resume. Thank you for coming on to our show, Jessica.
Yeah, welcome, Jessica.
Thank you for having me. Wow, that sounded very impressive. I'm super impressive on paper. Very impressive on paper. Excuse me, that's me. That's me. Sorry, just pull my earbud out. But yes, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Are you currently in Lubbock? Lubbock? Sorry,
it's Lubbock. It's Lubbock.
Lubbock.
Yeah, we're from Texas, so it's Lubbock. First of all, we got a real draw. You'll hear that, but it's Lubbock, Texas.
Lubbock,
and the
Texas.
LBK, not the LBC, the
LBK.
LBK. That's where we're from, the LBK.
If
anybody knows us, they're gonna know Mahomes came from us. Mahomes was a Red Raider, so I don't know anybody, especially Taylor Swift has put the Chiefs like forefront, but they already were for me because I have voice. But anyway, Mahomes is he came from Red Raider land. He's from Lubbock, Texas.
Oh, okay. Fun fact. Okay.
That matters. But yeah.
So Jessica from the LBK. Yeah. So how did you so you've been in nursing for 20 plus years. Like what inspired you to get into that NEMT business?
Well, for the last year, I've been in a hospital working in the ER. I don't do bedside care anymore. I'm too old, and I'm just not going to do. Wouldn't be the patients wouldn't like me either. But I do case management, so we kind of determine like what's appropriate to come into the hospital. If they're there, do they need to be obs, inpatient? Do we have other options? That type of thing. And what I had noticed more than anything else was that there are sometimes patients who wait. I mean, we're talking sometimes 24, 36 in the bad season, in the sick season, they're waiting simply for a wheelchair to go back to their home that might be 5 miles away. And a lot of times they're having to utilize an ambulance for that, which is overly expensive for whoever's paying for it, even if it's a hospital that has to foot that bill. I would see people sitting on stretchers for, even 4 hours in my mind is too long, but it was definitely sometimes triple, quadruple that long, and getting no care, getting no medicine, just waiting for a ride. And so when I kept seeing that repeatedly and we'd been looking into what we wanted to do, I was like, okay, this I can do. This is something that I can start. It's a need that needs to be filled. It was a hole. There's a hole missing. There's lots of different holes missing in healthcare, but that's one of them. And I was like, I can be helpful here, and I can help out here. So that's what started it.
How did you end up getting, from the initial phase when starting your company? How did you end up landing your first client? I feel like that's the first. Is that the first milestone that a lot of providers have to come across?
It is, and a lot of things are not what you know, it's who you know. So I happen to have obviously I'm from this area. We moved to DFW for a while, but I grew up here, went to nursing school here, and the admissions coordinator for an inpatient rehab was telling me, she was in the office and she was telling me what the problem they were having with transportation. And I was like, hey, guess what I'm doing? And so she was like, the first meeting that we had, which was very scary for my husband because this is a whole new world for him. But for me, I speak the language, and medical language is unlike any other language in the world. It's just, if you know it, you know it. And if you don't, it's like a fish out of water. So he went with me to our first, and it was an inpatient rehab. It's one of the bigger ones here in West Texas. And it was a big fish that we landed in. It happened to be the first one that we landed because I was familiar and friends with the admissions coordinator over there. So it was walking out of that and realizing that just went well, not being overconfident, but knowing it's a need. So people are going to reach out to me once they realize that we're here and that we exist. The business comes after that, but you do have to, it does start from a starting point. And that starting point was a meeting that went very well. where you just discuss what you do, what area you're going to cover, what your price point is, and you know that you're competitive. And something about the fact that I've been a nurse for 20 years was reassuring to the CEO and the COO of that inpatient rehab, because they would know that I would be transporting the appropriate type of patient, and how important the patient is, as opposed to dollars and cents aren't what is important here. Doing the right thing by people is. And so homegrown, family owned means something still, and a lot of different Americana culture. And it does definitely mean something here in Lubbock. So it was our first client, and I'll never forget the meeting. I'll never forget what I was wearing. I'll never forget what I said, because my husband now has to go to meetings and repeat it when I can't be there. But that was how it was.
So if you can give us like an overview of what was that meeting like? Was it very formal? I mean, was it formal? Was it very casual? How did you feel?
It's very formal. It was very formal. My husband and I were on one side of this big conference table, and then they've got their CEO, the CFO, the COO, the chief nursing officer, their business office, their director of rehab. Like, we're sitting across the table from like 7 other people. We're on one side and they're on the other side. It was a very formal type setting. Luckily for me, formal doesn't bother me, informal doesn't bother me, just because the different things that I've done. Like in other careers, it's like, oh my gosh, you had that many jobs. Like, what were you doing? In mine, however, it gives you a better scope. Right. So my dad was an accountant, and he would see me like going from place to place. He'd be like, hey, you're one of those people that's going to be jumping. I'm like, no, I'm trying to learn as much as I can about all the different things, So, but it was very formal. You have to be prepared to talk a lot about yourself, about what you're going to do, about what you will and won't do, where your boundaries are, just not like logistically, but in what you're in the care that you're going to provide and the service that you're going to do. Like, you have to know what you're saying to walk into those meetings, and you have to be confident about it in order to walk out of this meeting like that successfully, because otherwise you're looking across from like 8 other people who all have 100 plus people underneath them. You have to be able to have a good conversation and not be scared, because you're setting up something that they need. You're not begging for anything. You're just becoming another outlet for them to reach out to help them, because they need that help from you.
So for those watching, what she's basically trying to basically what she's saying is she's doing warm leads, right? You're nurturing warm leads versus cold leads. Cold leads are basically when those are not familiar with these things. It's when you reach out to someone and they don't have any idea who you are. That experience, a lot of times it may be a numbers game, because a lot of people don't know who you are. It could be it could be spam, it could be whatever it may be on the other end. When it's a warm lead, they already know who you are. They have an idea of who you are. So the chances of closing a deal is a lot higher. So in that case, that's what happened. It was a warm lead, correct? Because they already knew who you were. Perfect.
Yes.
And I was gonna say, your husband, he was not in the medical field beforehand, right?
No, he was not. He was in IT, the banking, and IT/banking is what his last job was. And then we realized that he does home things better than I do, and I do money making things better than he does. So we wrote role reverse very early in our marriage. We've been together for 27 years.
Wow.
And like any other person that's raised by a nurse will tell you, like, apparently our growing up, we're very traumatized, and we're very traumatizing because we see bad things every day. So literally, my kids get sick, I'm like, what? Is your limb falling off? You're fine. And whereas their dad was like, oh, what can I do? Putting fake band-aids on stuff and all that stuff. So we were like, okay, we know what works best. And what works best is for you to be a homeroom mother, and I'll go work. And that's the way that we worked, and it worked out great. Our kids are all great. And no, never anything medical. Always heard it. Didn't understand half of what I was telling him, but was a very good ear.
Jessica, are you team private pay or are you team brokers?
I am team, well, I'm going to say it. We just got into brokers.
Okay.
We just got into brokers because one of the big hospitals here uses a brokerage. So it makes it like not so conflict of interest, or this is my friend's place, send it over here. It's the teaching hospital here uses a brokerage firm. So we just became familiar with that last week. That has been an interesting endeavor. I will tell you, brokerages obviously make things more complicated, and there's a lot more phone calls when you get into dealing with brokers. Because I guess part of what
more phone calls.
It's a lot more phone calls because they call you, they get your quote, and then they have to then coordinate with like the discharge planner on the floor and then get the approval from financial things. So they make more calls to you than you're expecting. Like usually when someone calls me to get the phone, I would put it into the dispatching software, it's going to be this far, that they need oxygen, this much. I can give you the numbers, bam, we're done. You book it or you don't. When you're dealing with brokers, they're getting repeated calls about, now what about this? What if we put this into there? Let me get the the net number in the event that we do want to book. If we want to cancel, what do we do? It's a lot more hands in the pot when you deal with brokerages.
Yeah, I hear so many pros and cons, and it's such a divided response that I typically get when it comes to brokers and private pay. Some people are pro brokers, some people are anti brokers, some people are pro private pay, some people are anti private pay, and they always hate each other, right? So one always hates the other.
What I learned here doing this is that I want to be able to do public. Like I want the public to call. If mom and dad call me, they've broken something, they're in a wheelchair and it's temporary, I have no problem giving them a lower rate to go get their groceries, to go help them shop, right? Or go to their doctor's appointments, whatever that may be. But facilities, hospitals have a lot of money flowing in them. And I'm not saying that I deserve that, because nobody deserves all the money that we spend when we go into, all the money that we end up spending and how much money they take from us. But I do know that it's there. So from a hospital, I anticipate to get what we set our rates at, and there's not going to be any haggling, or anything in regards to that. And because when private pay is even from hospitals, because they agree to the rate and they pay it, and you're going to wait usually a 30-day turnaround, but even that's private pay, because NEMT is, for the most part, it's not regular. You don't get into CMS. You're not going to deal with Medicaid and Medicare or insurances. All of it's going to be private pay, essentially, by the end of the day. For me anyway, I've been regulated for a very long time, and I don't want to get back into that world again. So that may limit some of the things that we can do, but I'm okay with that. I am perfectly okay with that.
Well, Jessica, since you started your business, or it kind of launched recently, how many vans do you currently have right now?
We started with one. Within the first 2 weeks of soft opening, we knew we needed two. We have two. We are waiting until, and pretty much we're getting to the point where we're about to have to buy three. Our goal is for the first 12 months, I want a fleet of 10. That's my goal. And within the first 12 years of us opening, but it's you want to be able to say yes more than you say no. And so that is something that we sat down with the financial planner and was like, okay, let's start with one. We're going to have to say no. But then when we realized we were saying no way too much in the first 2 weeks, van number 2 was already ready to go. So, you've got to, it's all going to be movement. Everything you can't, something you can't measure. You can't manage something that you can't measure, right? So you have to measure how many calls you're getting, how many times you're saying no, and you have to look at those numbers and say, what can we do better about this? When do we pull the trigger on the next van? And so that's what we're looking at right now. Is you got to have staff. That's okay. We have Chryslers. They're minivans. Apparently, like that's who Braun is. Like Braun Ability is the company that puts in pretty much nearly every lift that you see, even in private vehicles. And they work specifically with Chrysler. They were doing only the one that I have now, and I can't think of the name of it. Some starts with an O, but they're only going to start outfitting Pacificas this next year. But even all the 2023 vehicles are a Chrysler minivan, and it's either side opening or rear opening, depending on what you prefer. And there's pros and cons to both of those we found as well. Not one of them are better than the other. They're just different. So we know what type of patient goes better in the back opening and then what goes better in the side opening now. So you live and you learn.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I have a two-part question, because earlier you mentioned that your husband Moses wasn't really fluent in the medical the world, and I guess like the first question is, what did you say, or how did you convince him to be open to the joining you into getting into this business? And the second part is like, I guess there's this, I don't know if it's a myth or a stereotype where, you know, people are reluctant to go into business with their partner or someone even like a close friend. Like, what advice? Because it seems like you guys make it work very well. So yeah. So the second part is like, what advice do you have, and how's your experience working with your husband in a business?
My experience is, if you were married for less than 5 years, don't do it. We have a very long track record, and I think you have to have that longevity and that faith in your partner to do it. Obviously he's seen my abilities over the years, so he knew that I could walk into a hospital and negotiate a contract with the bigger companies that I worked with before. And so he knows that I have the ability to do it and what my capabilities are. We've just been looking for what our thing would be that we wanted to own, that instead of me making millions of dollars for other people and making a really good salary at doing so, what can I do that benefits people, but also helps, you know, further the legacy that I'm able to leave our children. So that was he was easily convinced on that, but that's based on what I've done in my career. I think he felt there was a stability there, that he knows that I'm going to always be an RN. There's never going to be, you know, that's what I became an art nurse for. I'm not going to be one of those people that lies and says that I want to make the world a better place. I didn't. I wanted to have a job that I knew that I would always have a job. You know what I'm saying? Like that's why I became an RN. But I'm gonna tell you, we present a really good. We never argue in public. We never argue in front of our children, but believe me, there's lots of arguing that happens behind the scenes. There's like times I'm like, I will hit you with this van the next question that you ask me. And you know, and it's not even his fault, because it's not his fault. Like, he doesn't speak, like, it is a very specific language. And it's like kind of like teaching babies how to walk. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's now picking it up, but it's like, I'm the only one that can answer these questions, and I can't do everything all the time. But it really is. One of you needs to be an expert, or somewhat of an expert in what you're doing, right? Because if we were both non-medical, I honestly don't know how this would work at all,
I can
because
definitely
of
see what you mean.
what you're dealing with.
I feel the same. I feel the same way, Jessica, because when going to business, my business particularly, I found it very difficult to have the patience sometimes when someone doesn't know the language of the business. So if it's a technical problem, something that's a little bit more difficult, as an owner, as the founder of the company, sometimes it's challenging or it's easy to forget that we've been in the industry for quite a while, and the newcomers, they haven't had that experience. And so we're quick to lose that, you know, to have a fuse and say, like, how do you not know this? This is an easy problem.
I know. I'm like, what do you not understand about O2, 2L and C? Like, what is it? You don't understand about that. And he's like, what does that mean? And I'm like, I'll do like the C with the, you know, the line over it. That means with. In my world, that's meant with for like 28,000 years. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm just like, it just means with option. He's like, in what world is that a with? A with is like the W with a slash. I'm like, no, it's not, you know. So it has been, I am not a very patient person, and unfortunately he comes like looking at me like, okay, now I have to go take a moment, breathe, remind myself that I love the Lord and that I do not need to kill anybody while, you know, I'm married to my husband, because they need their dad. Because it is frustrating, because you think that everybody knows what you do, but they don't, and that's not their fault, and it's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault. It's just something they've got to learn, and there's going to be a learning curve of getting like all of the staff that I work with to, they're not ever going to know what I know. And I've got to realize that, like, they're not up here, and things, I can't assume that. And I've made a lot of assumptions that I just think in my mind are common sense. Well, it's common sense to an RN who's been an RN for 20 years, but is not common sense to a man who worked in banking and in computers. We were speaking, I guess like I'm speaking Portuguese, and he is needs to be a mind reader, like literally. And I'm like, why don't you understand this? It's because I've never heard it before, or it's said in a different way, so that's been a challenge.
Do you advise other aspiring NEMT founders to have a partner in this business?
Well, now you put me, if my husband watches this, I don't know what he's going to say. I would say no. And I'm just going to say no because all questions have to stop somewhere. And it's hard when you have to, we're 50-50, which luckily we're married, so we already understand that concept. But I will say that if I were in a 50-50 partnership with someone who hasn't been an RN for at least over the 10 years, or a doctor, or somebody else that speaks medicalese, I would not have a partner. I would be the sole owner, because if the buck stops with you, you don't want to have to explain it to somebody that doesn't have, I don't know if that's like really snotty to say that out loud.
No, I mean, it makes sense. I understand it though. So I totally understand it. I don't think it sounds snotty at all.
Yeah, no, same. I agree. It's fine. I think it's pretty rational.
Yeah,
I think so. So with this business, a lot of people, they have the idea that it's, I wouldn't say a get rich quick, but they believe that they can just hop in really quickly and then they can make a decent living. Now, I've heard that it takes quite some time. I've heard that getting contracts, even getting started, getting approved for even the credentials, I heard it takes time. So would you say this is a cash grab for people that's or it's a long game kind of thing?
This is long ball. This is long ball. We are not going for, we are not bunting. We are looking at, this is going to be years. And we have we've been doing rides now since July. We have not gotten one check yet. And we're mid-October right now. And that's because the length that it takes for our stuff to pass through, they have to verify that we do exist, that we are a company, that we have an LLC, that the vans are ADA compliant, that we've had certain types of training. And then you start doing rides before you get paid. And on average, but if you're getting in bed with Medicare and Medicaid, that'll be sometimes an 18-month reimbursement at times, years, 9 months. You have to have enough money to pay your staff and be able to pay for your vehicles. And these vehicles are insured at like $20,000 per vehicle a year. Like the insurance is insane. You have to be able to function for a minimum of 6 months, expecting that you might not see much reimbursement during that time at all. And so that's hard, because it's definitely not a get rich quick scheme at all. It's very much oh my God, I'm working all the time and I haven't gotten anything for this, but knowing that eventually that will pay off. But it is definitely not a get rich. There is nothing in this that's about getting rich. First, maybe not ever, but it may be able to get to where I get to get out of being a nurse. I don't anticipate this is going to make me a millionaire, and I'm going to have franchises all over the nation. I anticipate that this will get me out of having to go back into the hospital every day. Is what mine. You've got to manage your expectations, and if you're expecting to make a ton of money, you're wrong, Colonel Sanders, because that's just not going to work. That's just not going to work.
You mentioned that the van it's insured to be it's like 20,000. That's a lot of money. So how much money? Just give me a ballpark. How much money do someone need for startup capital to get started in this business?
$250,000.
Woo! Roger, you got that laying around?
Oh man, you got me scratching my head.
Exactly. Yeah, and the crazy thing is that you really have to be able to, one of you, if it's just you, obviously, you have to have a job during this time, because I have to be able to pay bills wow, this is, while we're in like in mode to work, you have to buy these vans are $80,000. And then, like I said, it's $20,000 to insure it, but they require $5,000-$6,000 to start the insurance policy on that van. So not only is it $20,000, you're paying most of that like up front, because they want the insurance that the assurance, I guess, that you were going to pay for that insurance. And when you can give that much money up front, they believe that you will. So, and you've got to get your logos, you've got to get your merchandising, you've got to get all of your people wearing. Oh, good God, did I turn you off? Sweet
No, we can see
baby
you. We can see you.
Jesus in the manger. Okay.
You're back.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm sorry. I mean, there's so many things. There's things that you don't think about. You've got to get already outfitted. You've got to get brochures. You've got to have your computer. You got to figure out what software you're going to use. You've got to figure out your phones. I mean, there's a lot of money that has gone out, and we haven't seen but a couple of $100 come in for private rides that we've done so far, because most of what we do is for companies. And we have yet to get reimbursement. And it's kind of one of those things that it'll get you like down. I've gotten in my emotions a few times about, why am I doing this? We're not making any money. And you have to remind yourself, it's not for money now, it's for money in a year. It's where we're going to be at.
It's an emotional roller coaster.
Makes sense. Now that like you're properly in the game, where you got everything started, what would you say are one of or some misconceptions that you had about NEMT before getting started?
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good question.
Misconceptions that I had were that I really thought that it was easy. Like I was like, I've run, that's gonna be so easy. This is ridiculous. And then I was like, and the contracts are just gonna pour in because I know everybody and everybody knows me, and like they know me. Like that's gonna be an easy contract. No, it's not, because it's got to run up the hill like to all the way to corporate and everybody. You can know somebody, but at some point, knowing people doesn't do you any good. And sometimes that even works against you, because doing what I do in my career, I fired people a lot, and not because I wanted to. And I'll tell you, like I tell everybody else, I've never fired anybody. People fire themselves. I don't ever take anybody's livelihood for granted. And then also being the owner of this type of thing at the NEMT, you have other people's livelihoods in your hands, and you don't think about that until like you're the one sitting there going, oh my God, I've got to keep cutting checks. And this is affecting you can't just shut it down one day and say, oh, well, that didn't work. Like that was a misconception of me thinking that money's going to be flowing, right away, faucet's going to turn on. Nope, that doesn't happen. Contracts are just going to happen because they know me. I'm an RN. Don't you know that I know what I know? Nobody knows that. Some people don't know. And that it was easy. I think really is that I felt like I was pushing that easy button on that Staples commercial. When I started this, there's nothing about this that's easy, not in any form or fashion. And you're going to second guess every single decision that you make.
And I can imagine there's a lot of follow-up calls that needs to take place. If you're talking about running up a hill all the way to corporate, you must stay on the phone, just like, hey, did you get my email? Hey, did you
Yes.
Hey,
Yes. It is a lot of follow-up. You've got to circle back around. You've got to circle back around. Who did you get a hold of? Who did you speak to? Who said they were
Jessica again?
Would you please just give her the contract? She is calling again. Again, she's calling. But you have to, like, it's competitive, but it's not, because it doesn't make any sense. Because you're just like, in my mind, I'm like, you guys know that this is a need. Like, just sign the contract. But it just doesn't work that way. You've got to do their vetting. They've got to vet that you are sustainable, that you're mean long term, and that you're going to do what you say. And that takes a while. And sometimes people want to see that it's worked for 6 months before they even want to talk to you about doing a contract, because they want to make sure that you're going to be there. So it's been challenging. I'll just say that you just got to. I reminded myself that I'm okay, and I don't need meds, and that my eye twitching is normal, and and not sleeping and not eating, very normal. That's normal. That's just normal people things.
Speaking of, oh, sorry. Speaking of challenges, yeah, you mentioned, there's challenges, during your experience of this entrepreneurial road.
Mhm.
And I took some notes of a few things that you mentioned earlier. In the way beginning of the interview, you mentioned that you were doing it for your mom and your grandma, and then
Mhm.
also that you also mentioned at first that I guess one of your ultimate goals is to leave the nursing industry and kind of focus on this business
Mhm.
100%, or even just
Mhm.
kind of let it give you passive income. But I guess in general, I just want to make sure that I'm not missing any gaps in terms of like, because I guess when people are on this entrepreneurial road, I guess a misconception, people kind of desire the instant gratification, but you seem to have a very great grasp and understanding that the great rewards come from delayed gratification. So you're still sticking it through. So it's like, for other people watching that are interested in entrepreneurship or even into it right now, like what is your ultimate why? Well, like what really keeps you going besides the things that I mentioned earlier?
My children,
That's
Mm.
in
solid.
all honesty, I want for them. Well, first of all, I've got two older boys and a daughter, and they range from age 23 down to 6. So we're at all stages of life at all times. And our oldest son is actually a driver for us. And I want them to see, because my father was an entrepreneur. And I saw that he sorry, okay, sorry. I saw how much work he did, and I would see the early mornings and the late nights. And it's now I benefit from my father as having been an entrepreneur, and so I don't know that I saw that it was a long game, but I just kind of learned that instinctively that it was he put in the work. Like you have to, in order to receive, to reap what you sow, you got to put in the sow. You've got it, and it takes time. And I want my children, first of all, I want to be able to leave them some monetary legacy, yes, but I want them to mainly see that you have to work. Like I don't get up and get paid just because of the fact that I exist. And unfortunately, some of the younger generation, that's really kind of their belief, is that, well, I'm worth, what are you worth? You're worth nothing. You're worth nothing. I'm worth something because of my initials and because of the fact that I worked my ass off for the past 20 years to get to where I had some nest up money to start this company with. And it was very thoughtful and very intentional what I did. And I wanted my children to see that their mother was not, their parents weren't scared to work. And I'll tell you that when you fill out that first, like, I was like having a whole panic attack week when I got contacted the lawyer to form the LLC, because I wanted to make sure that every every I was dotted, every T was crossed, so we didn't have to go back to do anything like that. Hiring him was the first time that I really, like, I hit the go button, and it scared I was scared. I was literally scared to death. Which I'm an RN, like I can go get, if they fire me from my job today, I'll go get another one tomorrow. But it's your name, it's your reputation, and I do not take those things lightly because I work very hard to get both those things. And when I think of, I just want to be, this is really getting on my nerves. I'm not getting the money. And when I get frustrated like that, I think about my children, and I want them to see that we stuck it out. And especially as the younger ones get older, they're going to know that their parents made something, and it took a long time and it was very frustrating. But they walked through the fire in order to be able to hand them, whether it's a legacy of working. It may not be financial legacy. I don't know. It's what I'm hoping for, is to be able to help them in the way that my father was able to help me, with college and things like that. But
Mm.
um, I want them to see that their mom was a badass. Their mom could do it. When she walked into a room, she was able to make things happen. And that's been, I don't know why, but that's my number one thing. I want my kids to look at me the same way that I look at my father. He's my hero. And I want for my children to be able to look at myself and my husband the same way.
I love that.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. You definitely have a lot of wisdom, and like, if someone were to come to you and ask, like, what is the best advice you ever received, like, what would you tell them?
Don't lie. Anything that's done in the dark is always going to come out to the light. And that's personal and that's professional as well. When I was starting it, I came out and I told my supervisors what I was beginning, because I wanted to see if it's going to be a conflict of interest, what I needed to do. If I needed to quit, do I need to find a new job? Do I need to move to a different department? I haven't lied about anything. It's too hard there's no sense in hiding. anything that you do, you've got to be transparent. So I guess maybe being as transparent as possible. I have a habit of being overly transparent. When my husband's like, "There, then have no all that," but you know, it's just like, I don't. If you lie about things, you got to figure out lies to cover up other lies, and I'm too honest and too direct to do that. And so I think that some people like that, some people hate that, but it's unpractical. And so I guess you have to be practical. You need to be grounded, and you need to have a reason why. I think.
Awesome, Jessica. I know we're getting close. How are we looking on time for you?
You're good.
We're good. Okay. You know, the road to entrepreneurship must be challenging. I mean, you mentioned many challenges that you faced. What was the biggest challenge, would you say, or biggest battle that you came across this year? And how did you overcome it?
The challenges are, well, especially since I'm female, I'll tell you the more challenges I have is dealing with another female who is in a role of power. We're horrible to each other. And so I think some of the biggest challenges that I run into is seeing how much some people do not want other people to succeed, and putting things in your way intentionally to try to mess you up. And personally and professionally, I've had some sabotage try to occur starting this company, and being a working RN. And it's a hard pill to swallow, because you can't say anything. You can't call people out personally when you want to. You can't go, you can't try to. The only thing you can do is remain who you are and keep doing what you do. And you've got to figure out a way to deal with it, to handle the stress of it, and to be able to move forward despite that thing that makes you want to just put your hands up in the air and say, "You know what? You do it then. You do it if you're going to do it better than me," or whatever it is that they think. It's hard. It's really people's perceptions, I think, and people have gotten in the way. Some people directly, some people indirectly. And if you don't have the knowledge, and if you don't have the confidence to walk through it, if you don't have those things, don't do it, because you're just going to spend money. My father has a saying that he doesn't like to spend money to piss himself off. And so, like, we would go on a family vacation, one of us would be in a bad mood, and he'd be like, "Nah, it's not the way that you're going to do it." And I'm not spending all of this money and all of my time and all of my knowledge to let other people make me angry, and to let other people set me off of the path that I know that I'm on. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is seeing people try to take you down or stop you from even starting. That's
they just don't want to see you win. They just don't want to see you win.
Yeah.
In this scenario, it sounds that individual wasn't avoidable. You had to deal with them in some aspect. So for people that's going through something similar, how did you deal with it? How were you able to overcome that challenge?
It was a lot of I don't meditate, so I'm not going to say meditation. I would take, when I wanted to have a reaction, I've learned I'm like a knee-jerk reactor. Like, in general, like in basic, like my first reaction I saw, and I'm female, so I'm melodramatic at my core. So I've learned that that's never done me any favors professionally, especially when I was younger. So I've learned that. So what I've had to do is just simply step away from it, walk away from it, go do something that means something to you. Go love on or hug on somebody that means something to you, and remind you've got to keep it at the back of your mind at all times that this is for a reason. When you've just got to, unfortunately, you just got to deal in the world where you just don't deal with anything, or you walk away from it, or put your hands up and just stop. And it seems to be, I hate to say it, but the younger generation that does that more, or blaming this person or that person. That's why I can't be successful. Your success entirely depends on you. Nobody else is going to be able to get in my way to that effect. If I let them turn me down, or if I let them deter what I'm doing, then they've won. And I don't lose. So it's maybe it's that mentality. I don't start things to lose, but it's also given me a lot of anxiety internally because it's my name, literally, and it's on this business, it's my reputation, and those things are going to be questioned. And when they're questioned, you've got to be able to just say, you know, all right,
Absolutely.
good, good on you, because I'm over here doing what I do.
Absolutely. And just keep pushing your way to success, right?
Yeah, it's not easy. I'll tell you that right now. Anybody that's ever thought that, unless you win the lottery, which whoever does that, it's a lot of work to get to where people you're actually successful. Like it's a lot of work, and you've got to be prepared to do it.
Wow. That's a lot of, I think that was amazing. That was a lot of great information, Jessica. That was amazing. Roger, what do you think?
Filled with a lot of wisdom. No, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm learning a lot while like just interviewing you, and it's truly inspiring too. Like I just feel like you just have a pretty great attitude and perspective about like life challenges in general.
Yeah, I think that as a chief nursing officer, as a director, I always had I was surrounded by RNs who wanted to do my job, right? Like they wanted, and I encouraged them and I taught them how to do my job. I was like, I want you to be the person that the next job that I get, I want you to be my competition. That's my mentality, so if someone comes to me asking me how to do this, I'm absolutely jump in the water. There is plenty of action. Like there really is, but you have to be able to see it through, and I'm a teacher. I think people, the more that they understand, the more bought in they are to something. And a lot of nurses are like, this is, do this, and just walk away. And it's really easy to become jaded and hateful doing nursing and getting talked to the way that we get talked to. We were heroes for 5 seconds during the pandemic, and now we're back to being the concierge of medications. And you just got to walk through it. If you don't have the confidence in yourself and in the company, don't do it, because you'll spend money only to walk away from it. And if you can't afford to walk away from it, then you shouldn't do it. If it has to be successful and you can't afford to have lost, then you shouldn't start this.
I love that. So you mentioned, you gonna say something?
Oh no, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh no, because I was gonna say, like, she mentioned she was a teacher. She is a teacher in the NEMT space, and I found you on TikTok. So, and you're giving a lot of wisdom there. So, is that someplace that you like to focus your time? Is that where you like people to kind of come to your TikTok to see what you have to offer? Do you offer consultations or anything, or are you teaching?
I don't, but I would so love to. Like because the practicalities of nursing and like what you read in a book are two different things. Like what you see in a book and you map it out and you're able to write an essay about it, that's great. But can you take care of a person? Can you take care of an individual? And a lot of, either by the time you've been doing it at 20 years old, 20 years, either you're jaded or you love it. And you have to walk away from it sometimes in order to go back to it to love it. And so I think nurses especially need to realize the point that when you walk into a hospital and you hate your patients, you hate your coworkers, you just can't stand it, and you can see it, you've got to change yourself. Like you've got to walk away from it, and then figure out where your joy is and find it. My joy has always been, which is surprising to even myself, has always been to make leaders. Like I was a leader by birth. My father said I was just the way that I am, and I want everybody to be at my level or better than me, that has ever been underneath me. And I now have, like, in DFW where I primarily did, I think I've got 5 or 6 very successful CNOs that were underneath me. And the first meeting was like, we're not going to be friends, but if you do your job, then we'll be fine. It's kind of like the Tom Brady mentality: do your job, and then I will help you to become. You ask me questions, because the more questions that you ask, the more I realize maybe I don't know them, and nobody's ever going to have all the answers, but I'm going to be able to have a pretty good scope of things after all of these years of doing this. And you sometimes have to tailor your attitude and your approach based on who you're speaking to, and all of that comes back into this too. Just everything, your world experience, your life experience, nursing, all of it becomes part of this in EMT. Regardless,
Absolutely.
the base of it is people, and that's not ever going to change.
Are you
Right.
hiring? Oh, or you're gonna say something, Roger?
Oh no, I just had another question, but
Oh, go no,
I
go
can
ahead,
let
go
you
ahead, go
finish.
ahead, go ahead, go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, no, like so, I was curious that like since you're in nursing space, one of the things that you worked
Mhm,
in was in hospice care,
mhm.
and I'm sure like working in that environment changes your perspective about life because I've heard of stories of people that work in there because people patients talk about how they have regrets and all that stuff, and I was wondering like from your own experience, like has it impacted your life in any way, and if so, like how did it impact your perspective about life?
Hospice care, when I did
Yeah,
hospice
yeah,
care,
yeah.
um, you realize that obviously none of us make it out. None of us make it out, and you only get one time to die. And so my job was to make that death the best death possible, as odd as that sounds. But when it comes to doing it personally, it's a whole other game. My mother died on hospice in my home, and I've been a hospice nurse, and so I knew everything I should have done, mechanically.
Mm.
And when it came time to do it, I couldn't do it. And you have to know your limitations, and it does put you. You want to think of every person that you're taking care of. You may be the last face that they see. You may be the
Mm.
last person that touches them. What you say, and what you do matter. And I know I my face is probably emblazoned in some families remembering was this hospice nurse who was with. And I don't remember that person anymore because I've done, I can't honestly, it's over 100 people whose deaths that I've watched at this point easily. Um,
Mm.
but you only get one opportunity to do that right, and you want to do it well. And it
Mhm.
sounds weird saying good death, but I want to have a good death. And so that's you've only got one opportunity to do it. So I think I kind of started to approach different things in my life that way. If you only have one
Mm.
interaction with me in your lifetime, was it positive or was it negative?
Like that, I like
Mm.
that. If I was getting transported or if I needed someone to transport it, like that's exactly who I would want. Someone that has that kind of mentality to transport my loved ones. Someone that actually cares, and you can tell by just talking to Jessica, she genuinely cares. It's deeper than just monetary gain. It's deeper than just a surface level. Oh, like I'm just trying to make a difference. Her reason is so deep, and I think I love that. I love that what you just said.
Thank you.
I
I mean,
agree.
it's honest and genuine at this point. It is what it is, and we're doing things like, well, I have loved it because I see my son, and you see your children, and either parents are like ignorant to their children's. I'm more hard. I'm very hard. Like I look at my children like, that's not, through a microscope. My kids are like, why are you so hard on me? Um, but I've seen my oldest, like he walks into these nursing facilities and he's devastated. Like he's very empathetic, and he's taken two different ladies to church on Sundays because they had nobody. He was taking one lady who was moving from the hospital into a home, and her whole entire family had left her. And there's always three sides to every story. Hers, and actual truth is what I've always told everybody. Like there's always three, and nobody knows it. And then maybe that person made bad decisions, but doesn't mean that their life has to end a certain way because they made bad decisions when they were younger. No. But he's walking and he sees like what these facilities look like. These nurses are burnt out. These aides don't care,
Mm.
and his heart hurts. And so he's like, he could come home crying. I just don't want to do that for you and dad. I'm like, why do you think I had you? I had you so that you wouldn't put me in a nursing home. Like that's why I have children, so you take care of me, duh. But he's like really tearful, and I've seen his heart. Like when he picked up a patient from dialysis, and they had a really hard dialysis, and people after dialysis are really tired. And she was like, I just want McDonald's. She's lived in a facility for like 20 years, and they don't eat out. And he drove her through a McDonald's, and he's paying out of his pocket money that we're not getting paid yet. And I'm totally fine with losing half of a fare. Like if let's say ride is $40, but he pays $20 to go to Rose's, take that patient over to McDonald's, wherever they want to go to, that's still money well spent because that is a person, an individual that he has now changed their day.
They're
Even
going above
makes
and
their day.
beyond. They're going above
Yeah,
and beyond.
Mm.
It's like you're touching the soul rather than just doing a service. You're
that's
touching the
exactly
heart.
right. And I
Mm.
believe that in this industry especially, it's going to come back around. And
Absolutely.
whether that means monetarily or just that we're busy and we're able to just stay afloat, like I'm believing that because I've seen both my husband and my son do things This is a world that I walk around in, so I'm aware how jaded people are and how mean people are. It's not theirs. And luckily, honestly, they are not part of this industry where it's just people. It's just, it could be their mother, it could be their grandma, it could be their wife, and they're just like not having it. And so whatever makes that person's day better, they're doing. Going through a tea place, getting a strawberry lemonade for a lady, hugging you when they're crying and they're devastated because they're not going to be able to leave, saying a prayer before they leave the room, hoping that this patient has cried the entire way, saying that their entire family's put them in this place, they're going to forget them and no one's going to remember them. To say, you matter to me, I'm going to remember you. And to walk back into that facility, taking somebody else, and taking the time to walk back and say, hi, Mr. White, you remember me? Yeah, I'm just checking on you. I told you I wouldn't forget you. Those things matter. And so if we're just able to keep running, to be able to do that kind of stuff, I'm totally good with it. Like, and that's the goal, really, is to make people's days better. And we can't fix everything about life, but we can make the moment that we're with them better.
That's phenomenal. I love that.
Yeah.
So, Jessica, what do you want the audience to know? Are you hiring at the moment? Do you have any events coming up? You mentioned you're offering consultations, but yeah.
We are, I mean, anybody that wants to reach out to me and has questions, feel free to. I'm not by any means an expert. I'm not a doctor, so please don't ask me to diagnose, which happens quite a lot. But I can kind of get you in the direction that you need to be going. What did you just say? I'm so sorry. I've got 1,000 things going. What did you ask me? Where we at?
What do you want the audience to know? Like, do you have anything to let them know? Like, what do you have going on? Are you hiring?
We are hiring. I kind of know, like, each van that we want to have it. I want it to have it. We've named all of our vans, and after, like, our first van's name was Mahomes, but she's a female. Like I told you, Patrick Mahomes. Our second was the Pirate, and she's female, but she was named after Mike Leach. They'll all be named after Raiders, probably. Some of them had to do with Lubbock, Texas. We are hiring, but I know who I kind of want because I worked around enough people to know who would be best fitted for this. Each van is going to have its own set staff. They're going to be assigned to Mahomes or the Pirate, or I think we're going to do Welker is going to be the next one that we do. And we are always hiring. I have my core team that we started this with, but you have to have a buy-in. And so once we get to a point, everybody's going to be seeing gain from it, because if you don't see a gain, no matter, we are paying very well, I will tell you that. We do pay well, but in order to do your job well every day, you have to believe in it, one, but then you also have to see a little reimbursement. So there's going to be percentages, based on profit. And obviously you've got to do your job well to get those, to get the bonuses, to be able to do the things. So that's what I know as a nurse. It's not, money doesn't make everything, but it does make it a little better. To get yelled at and be treated badly, you do want to get paid. And I want my staff to get paid what they're worth. And so we are hiring. And if anybody ever wants to ask me anything about any of this, I'm always like, if I'm available, we can talk.
Where can they go to apply for a job?
Really, we have a matadormobility.com website, but probably honestly, we're on Indeed. We have a Facebook page. To send me a message via Facebook, probably honestly be the easiest way. Or we do have an Indeed posting as well.
Awesome. So you guys, we will pin the link in the description of the video, and you guys can connect with her. And we're gonna pin her website so you can see her website and her Facebook, because you said Facebook is the easiest way.
Mm-hmm.
Where else can people find you?
They can find me on TikTok. I'm trying to do, what I would want to do is like tutorials. People don't know, people coming in the age of Medicaid, Medicare, they don't understand these things, and they sometimes get like talked into the wrong thing. And so my big thing is like, don't do any managed Medicare ever, never, because they manage your care. Like anything that says managed in front of it literally means managed, to the point that you're taken out of the equation. Even doctors' decisions are taken out of the equation. So I'm a nurse. My mother called me Nurse Ratchet when I first became a nurse, after one flew off the cuckoo's nest, because I was like the last one that was going to be a nurse. Like, for real, I was going to school to be a lawyer. That didn't work out. So I became a nurse. And can you see me?
No, yeah, I can see you. I
Okay,
can see
sorry.
That's fair.
Sorry. TikTok probably is, I want to grow that platform, not for money, but so that people, I can teach more, because unless you see some things, you don't know it. And unless you're told some things when, as we get older, you don't know it either. So, you know, I'm at 20 years of nursing. I've got some experience and some things, some practicalities that I feel like everybody should know, and they just don't. And I want for people to know as much as they can and be as informed as they can about their healthcare and things that they're available to them as we age. We put into the system, we might as well get something back from it, right?
I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, Roger, you have anything else you want to add?
No, I just wanted to tell Jessica from the LBK that, definitely, I definitely love your charisma, positivity, human authenticity that you brought to the interview. Definitely respect how you're passionate about people and uplifting people all around. And you definitely exemplify great traits of a true boss, a great leader. So just wanted to thank you for your time, man. Appreciate you for sharing your story and all the wisdom today.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me. I was like, oh, I want to see now. I'm official. People are asking me questions.
I'm glad I came across
awesome.
your TikTok. Yeah,
Thank you so
glad I
much.
came across it. So we will see you guys on the next interview. You guys take care.
All right. Bye, y'all. Have a good day.